So just for those of you who are not familiar with Kahoot, it is an interactive, technology-based quiz game. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but basically the way Kahoot works is you create a deck of questions. I've already done that, and then you can project the questions for students to see, and then students sync to the game using an access code on their phones, and then they can choose answers on their phones, and it'll keep track of scores and things like that, and students tend to love it. I've gotten very positive feedback from teachers about it. Okay, so that's a little overview of what Kahoot is. If you want to know a little bit more, you can also go to the Kahoot's website and watch their official intro videos. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. They're each around a minute in length. But you don't have to. I'll demo exactly how to sign in and things like that in a minute. So you'll want to give a brief overview of Kahoot to your students before you start playing, as I'm doing now for you. And then you want to divide the class into teams of 4 to 5 students. And a key point is that each team only needs to use one mobile device. Only one person per team should sync in to the game. You're going to be using it on team mode anyway, so it's going to be built for this. And we want students to be in teams, one, so they're working together and talking about the answers before they submit. And also because not all students may have smartphones. So you only need one smartphone, one mobile device per team. And I think at least 1 in 4 or 5 students in the class should have phones handy. Then, after you've explained the game and divided students up, you'll want to set things up. Maybe before you divide them up, I don't know. But at some point, you'll want to set things up. So what you'll do is you'll log into the PTPS Kahoot account using the following information. The username is PTPS_Berkeley. The password is PTPS_Berkeley. And both of them are case sensitive, so make sure you use the right cases. So I will demo this now. Just go to Kahoot, kahoot.com, log in. Type PTPS_Berkeley. Password PTPS_Berkeley. And then we log in. And you go to Kahoots over here. And then you find the grammar rules Kahoot, the only one that exists right now, and you go to play. When you click play, it's going to ask you which mode you want. You want team mode, as we discussed. Then it'll tell everyone to get into their teams. The screen will display for an annoyingly long time. And then, wow, some nice music. Then this will display. And this is what you show and project to students. This game pin. And this URL, and they can then join, one smartphone, one person per group. When they've all joined, then you can start playing the game, and of course, no one's joining now, so I can't demo that. But you just click start, and then students will roll from there. Okay, I hate to cut off that music. But let's go on. So yeah, I think I went through that. I went through all of this. That's just a verbal description. And then you can play the game. And remember that it's for fun, but it's also a learning experience. So you shouldn't just sort of rush through the game and see who's winning, but you should pause after each question and make sure students understand why the answers are correct and incorrect. There's only 15 questions. There's a 30-second time limit on each one, so this game would be super quick if you don't stop and explain. And I've allocated 30 minutes for it because I really want you to and encourage you to stop and explain the answers, especially for tricky questions or questions that a lot of students missed. You're going to be able to view the distribution for each question after it's answered, and if a lot of groups missed it, you should definitely spend time debriefing it. If everybody got it correct, you don't need to spend so much time. And then lastly, as I've said in the past, you can always distribute prizes if you want. You don't have to, but I've found that students really love candy and stuff like that. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is walk through these questions and just explain a little bit why the correct answers are correct, because there's no, in the classwork and homework assignments, there are those official SAT explanations of the answers, so I don't feel a need to do it in the video, but there's no official explanations for these. So I'd like to go through it now. And again, you're not going to use this interface. This is for editing. You're not going to edit the Kahoot. You're just going to play it. But I'm using this now so we can view all the questions. So question number 1, non-native speakers of the English language. I don't know why I said English. Non-native speakers of the language finds the pronunciation to be difficult. Well, what's correct here? The correct answer is find. Non-native speakers is plural. Find is the plural conjugation of the verb. This is consistency in number, and find is the only one that works. Then here, most of the parts are interchangeable, comma, but as always, comma, there are differences. The correct answer is no change. There's nothing wrong with this. Most of the parts are interchangeable. Then we put a comma. We separate this from why can't I think? A dependent clause, independent dependent clause. You can use a comma to separate them. And then, but as always, there are differences. So within this dependent clause, we have another dependent independent clause, and we're separating those two with a comma. So this is perfectly fine. And all of these down here are just not okay. And this also tests the difference between there, which is a pronoun, and there, which is a contraction combining they are. Question 3. The celebration is over, and all the people in the streets, including me, were headed home. No, this is just awful. There is no consistency in tense here. This is in the present tense. This is in the past tense. Bad, 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 bad. Change it to are headed. Then, question 4. The album had been out for ages. It only gained popularity recently. Again, this is awful. This is a comma splice. This is what students should not do. So how do you fix a comma splice? Well, there's various ways. The way that we're going to fix it here is we add a coordinating conjunction. The other things you could do are not add a comma, just add a coordinating conjunction, but we need the comma, so that's not correct. And here we're splitting it into 2 sentences, but then we're beginning one with the conjunction, which you shouldn't do, so that's not correct. So the best answer is B. Then 5, before the invention of the printing press in the 1400s, books were read only by the wealthy. Fascinating, and also grammatically correct. You don't need to change it. If you try to put other punctuation, you're wrong. Then down here, every author still has to make a few more choices about their book. Did I read that correct? Every author still has to make a few more choices about their book. Okay, what's wrong here? Here we're testing consistency in pronoun. So every author is singular. It needs a singular pronoun. There is a plural pronoun. This doesn't work. It should be his or her book. Question 7. The machine overheated quickly because it was sitting in the sun. No, 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 no. You can put a comma after quickly, but why are you putting a comma after because? You should only have these 2 commas if you're trying to offset non-essential information. This because is not non-essential. Without it, it would be the machine overheated quickly. It was sitting in the sun, which is a comma splice. And no, 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 no. So the good way to do it is down here with just 1 comma, answer D, and the others are other punctuation mistakes. Question 8. Halfway done.
The differences in our background and our country of origin show how diverse, well, we are. This one's tricky. Sounds correct. But if you look closely, our is plural, background and country are singular. So it's not technically correct. We need to make these plural for consistency in number. Question 9. This is not to say, however, that we shouldn't care. Okay. So this is not to say, however, that we shouldn't care. Here the correct answer is comma, however. You can use commas to offset non-essential information. This is not to say that we shouldn't care. That's a perfectly good sentence without the however. And then when we put a however in the middle, it's a non-essential information, and we surround it by 2 commas. We can't just put the 1 comma because you can use 1 comma if you're separating a dependent clause and an independent clause. That we shouldn't care. That's a dependent clause. This is not to say, however. That's not even a dependent clause. That's just a nothing. So you can't put a comma just between these 2 things. It doesn't work. And you also shouldn't do these other incorrect choices. Question 10. You may want to do well in this race somehow. However, that's a complex issue than it may seem. Wow, if you read this out loud, it really sounds wrong. If you just read it in your head, it might sound okay. However, that's a complex issue than. We're trying to do a comparison, but we don't have the other half of the comparison. So we need to add a more here. Now this is a correct comparison. That's a more complex issue than it may seem. We need this superlative form here. Here we have the nothing form. We're not even indicating that we're comparing. And then the others are incorrect because they attempt to use commas incorrectly. This is a correct usage of a comma. Question 11. The number of zeros and ones, or ones and zeros, tell computer what the binary means. This is another one that's really, really tricky. It sounds correct. But tell is a verb. What's the subject here? Is it ones and zeros? It's actually not ones and zeros. It's number. The number of ones and zeros tell computer. So number is singular. It needs a singular verb. So it has to be tells. This might be the trickiest question in this entire game. Make sure to emphasize this to students. The subject is number, not of ones and zeros. That's like a modifier of the subject. Then Q12. You might choose to have either a prologue, an interface. An interface. Sorry, I've been doing too much computer science homework. You might choose to have either a prologue, a preface, and a foreword. That also doesn't sound too good if you read it out loud. This is testing seesaw conjunctions. Either needs to be paired with or, not and, so we need an or. So B is correct. Question 13. The Norman conquest took place in 1066 and is led by William the Conqueror of Normandy. Oh, no, that is awful. We have took place in the past and is led in the present, and this bad, and then this fixes it. Good. 14. Many factory workers thought their jobs were safe, but we now know that they were wrong. Is there anything wrong here? No. This is perfectly fine, and if you try to eliminate this coordinating conjunction or add a semicolon or a colon or some other punctuation, you're going to get a sentence that does have something wrong. Finally, Sammy wanted to dance, eat dinner, and then she wanted to play with her dog. Sort of sounds okay, but this is testing faulty parallelism. Remember, equivalent portions of a sentence need to have identical form. So we're listing things she's going to do. Those are equivalent portions of the sentence. Dance, okay, that's a verb. Eat dinner, that's a verb. And then she wanted to play with her. That's all this extra stuff. No. Wanted to, let me start again. She wanted to play. That's all this extra stuff. The correct answer is just play. Play is just a verb, like these other verbs. And if you try to add these other ones, again, it's extra stuff and it's not in parallel. Okay, so that's the Kahoot. That's an overview of the questions and why the answers are correct. If you have any other questions about it, or you think there's some error, just contact me over Slack. And remember to have fun. I think this is one of the most fun games of the semester.